Hey everyone, Warwick's here. Feral Druid is a spec that has been memed on for pretty much its entire existence in World of Warcraft. There's not been very many times where the spec has been considered a staple of the meta in PvE content. PvP is a different story. It has been staple in PvP many times before, but in PvE, not so much the case. However, they did recently get buffs to their AoE spells, so Thrash, Swipe, and Primal Wrath, that allow it to find a bit more success on AoE based fights such as Anduin, or on Mythic Plus just in general. So today we're going to talk about everything you need to get started with a Feral Druid, or if you're coming back to the spec in 9.2. This was actually asked for by a viewer of mine who wanted to know if I was going to do a Feral Druid guide. I originally didn't plan on doing one because I've switched this character to be a Resto Druid main, but it was asked, so I'm going to start with talent today. So for talent builds, there are two different builds that you can work with, the single target build and the AoE build. For the single target build, you want to start with Sabertooth. Basically, you get extensions on your Rip by 5 seconds each time you Ferocious Bite, and Ferocious Bite deals increased damage. Single target fights, your biggest damage output is going to be your Ferocious Bite in terms of what finisher you're using most often, so this just has natural synergy in single target situations, making it so you don't have to refresh Rip as often, and gives that Ferocious Bite a little bit more to do. In AoE situations, you want Predator. Basically, when you have a target with a bleed on it and dies while the bleed is still active, you get an automatic reset on Tiger's Fury, your main DPS cooldown, and get an additional 5 seconds on Tiger's Fury. So this is the best in AoE situations. Obviously, you want to get a bleed, Primal Wrath, or Thrash, or as many rakes as you can as possible, and you're just going to get Tiger's Fury uptime a lot. So you get a lot of energy regen out of it. You're going to get a lot of damage uptime on it, and then it just allows you to have Tiger's Fury basically up for every single pull in Mythic Plus. So lots of really natural synergies. Lunar Inspiration isn't good. Hasn't been since I've come back to the game, so don't use it. 25 row Wild Charge is the best all-around choice. Just gives you a lot of mobility. You get the leap behind an enemy as a Feral Druid, but you can also get the travel form charge, the swim speed in the aquatic form, things of that nature. Tiger Dash does have use on fights that you need very quick but short bursts of movement speed. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would require that, and Renewal is just a heal that you can use for progression content if you don't see Wild Charge being all that useful, but I don't see much use in Renewal personally. I prefer Wild Charge. On the 30 row, the Balance Affinity is pretty much your only choice. This is the only DPS increasing ability affinity by giving you an extra 3 yards on your abilities. So to think like you just use this Competent Veteran, you can see right here, right there, I'm considered in range, whereas other melee are like up here. So in this case, in the Necrolord dungeon, I'll explain why in a minute, I'm at the bottom of the stairs and can attack my target. You can see going good there, whereas other melee would have to be here in order to do it. Guardian Affinity can be used for progression content again to give you that little bit of extra damage reduction, but I just don't see it being worth over Balance Affinity. On the 35 row, Heart of the Wild is the best choice overall. Because you're using Balance Affinity, you do get all the Balanced Druid abilities, to where if you have to stay away from a boss for an extended period of time for any particular reason, you can shift into Moonkin form, use Convoke the Spirits, or you can use any of these abilities, plus you get Typhoon, which is great utility for Feral Druid and AoE, something that they kind of lack. So Heart of the Wild, just the best overall ability. Mighty Bash, if you need a single target stun for any reason. Mass Entanglement can be useful on Spiteful weeks, where you just mass entangle all the Spiteful Shades, allow your group to run away without the Shades whacking on any of your teammates, and you don't have to worry about being chased by it. On the 40 row, Soul of the Forest is the best talent available. Your finishing moves giving extra energy and extra damage. So again, just really loads into your finishers. There are some builds in single target where you can use Savage Roar. I'm personally not a fan of it. Just adding extra finishers in when you're already trying to bite to maintain your Rip. So applying Rip and then Savage Roaring in between all of that to make sure you're getting the 15% damage buff and energy regen. You can't use it. It does make the rotation a little bit more complex, but Soul of the Forest is very easy. You're getting at 5 combo points, that's 25 energy being spent, which is basically the amount of Rip and Rake, and then getting extra 5% damage on all finishers, like synergy with Sabretooth, synergy with Predator, because you're going to get the additional bonus from Tiger's Fury. So just really good synergy, really, really good passive talent. Incarnation isn't good. Berserk got some buffs at the start of this expansion that kind of made Incarnation redundant. On the 45 row, Brutal Slash is your best single target situation. It replaces Swipe, only costs 25 energy, so it's a very efficient combo point generator. This would actually basically move Shred down the priority in terms of what you're going to be using, because you would want to use, Rake, and then Brutal Slash to build up your combo points. Of course, with Blood Talons, which we'll talk about in a minute, you want to get Blood Talons active. Just very energy efficient, 25 energy versus Shred's 40. It seems a no-brainer for single target. Does have use in small cleave situations, but as well, because it does do it in a cone. So it has some AoE applications, even on fights like Anduin, where you may not use Primal Wrath because you want to get that single target damage on the Avatar of the Lich King. Spoilers. Or you want to get priority damage on Anduin, whatever the case may be. You still have some AoE applications here with Brutal Slash itself. Primal Wrath is your AoE combo point generator. Excuse me. Apologies. Primal Wrath is your AoE combo points spender. Basically, this does damage up front and then applies Rip for 12 seconds at 5 combo points to all targets. Basically, if there's more than 2 targets ever available in a group, you want to use this as your only finisher that you would use. Don't worry about overriding the Rip duration, just because you're more about that upfront damage, and then the Rip damage is just peachy over time. So, on the 50 row, all 3 of these talents have a niche. Blood Talons is generally the most useful. So when you use 3 different combo point generating abilities within 4 seconds, the damage of your next 2 finisher abilities, either Rips or Ferocious Bites or Primal Wrath, it does affect Primal Wrath, are increased by 30%. So it just adds even more into your finishers, really leaning into your finishers. Your mastery is based on your finishers and your bleeds. So as you can see, Feral really leans in on its finishers as its big damage profile. Moment of Clarity is a much more simple build, giving you extra energy. And then also making your Omen of Clarity passive, which allows your Shred, Thrash, Swipe, Brutal Slash, if you're talented into it, be free. So this gives you 2 charges of that and makes your builders do an extra 15% damage. I would love to see Blizzard maybe look into building you have your finisher based build with your bleeds and stuff like that, but I would also like to see them a little bit more of a spammy, like your combo point builders are the things that you want to really focus on, and then Moment of Clarity could work really well. Feral Frenzy does have some very, very small niches in big AoE burst situations. Typically not going to be better than Blood Talons, but Feral Frenzy most commonly used in PvP as far as I know. Don't quote me on that, but if it does, there. And Feral Frenzy also acts as the quote-unquote ultimate ability for the Night Fate Covenant ability, Convoke the Spirits. We'll talk about that in a second. As far as Covenants go, Night Fate still remains the best. As you can see, I'm Necrolord, because Necrolord Resto Druid is actually pretty good in keys, so that's why I'm currently Necrolord, as I'm a Resto Druid main on this character now. But Night Fate for Feral Druid is going to be your best overall bet. Convoke the Spirits is a huge amount of burst damage in both single target and has good applications in AoE, because it can apply things like Thrash, it can do Feral Frenzy, it can do swipes as well, helping you build up those combo points really quickly, allow you to get Primal Wraths off as well. Basically, it can do things like regrowth, so you can even get some self-sustain inside your Convoke. Ideally, you don't want to see regrowths or like Wrath. You want to see as many Shreds, Ferocious Bites, Feral Frenzies, things like that as much as humanly possible. But if you need the health and you hit Convoke, you might get a chance at a regrowth, so help you with that sustain, along with your Predatory Swiftness passive. If you're looking for an alternative because you're just sick of Night Fae, Kyrian has some potential viability there with Kindred Spirits. Find out which DPS you want to link it to, and then use it on cooldown. Just link to that DPS all the time, and then get your damage buff, as well as giving them a damage buff. It's a little more of a supporty style of play. It's not going to be as effective DPS-wise, but you have Kyrian File, which has its own benefits, as well as Kindred Spirits being a little bit of a different play style from Convoke, which is more of a raw damage output style play. Alright, Soulbinds. Let me get the Soulbind calculator, and let's start with Kyrian. For Kyrian, we are looking at Mechanicos. So, of course, Bronze Call to Action, getting Effusive Anima Accelerator, reducing the cooldown on Kindred Spirits. All of these are just simply the best things. You want Kindred Spirits up as much as humanly possible. So, basically, this allows you to get Kindred Empowerment more often, so 20% of your damage is additional Arcane damage, healing, or absorption. Never a bad thing. If you are Necrolord, because you want to be like me, which I don't recommend it, it's useful in PvP, but not in PvE. Bonesmith and Mirror, getting the extra 3% agility for having enchants on. Mnemonic Equipment, very good, so you basically get a pseudo-execute stuff. So when you do Ferocious Bites on an enemy below 35% health, you get 3% of that damage done repeated again. So if you do a 10,000 Ferocious Bite, you get 300 damage repeated again. Doesn't seem like much. Really, Carver's Eye is what you get the most of, getting that mastery up at the early start for damaging above 90% and getting up to 5 stacks of 137 mastery, 137 times 5, do the math. Just really, really solid. And also, Marrow Gemstone gives you extra crit. Feral Druids love crit. Crit's great. So you want to use this and get extra crit after landing 10 critical strikes. Just provides the best overall bonus to your damage profile. For Night Fae, it is Nia. Get the mastery from Grove Invigoration, so never a bad thing. You can do either burrs or poison depending on what content you do. I would do burrs in raid situations where interrupts aren't going to be that prevalent. Poison in Mythic Plus where interrupts are that prevalent. And then of course Bonded Hearts being a little bit of a support ability. And then you can also do something like Called Shot or giving you like an extra heal over time, along with a Conduit that we'll talk about here in just a minute. So Nia for Night Fae, and then for Venthyr, it is Theotar for 2 reasons. One, Soothing Shade provides mastery. Feral Druids love mastery. Party favors, just really good, giving you haste first crit or agility for 4 hours. You don't hate any of those. Haste is not ideal, but the other 3, you'll absolutely take it. You can get, of course, your little bit of self-sustain with Always Tea Time, or get more speed / avoidance when you're well fed. You have Token of Appreciation to allow you to that Conduit path. Like, he's just really good. Let's just face it, he's really good. So, what are you going to put in those spots for Feral Druid? So, there's a variety of potency conduits depending on your content. For raid, you want to run Taste for Blood, giving you extra Ferocious Bite damage for every bleed on the target. So this is where maintaining Thrash, Rake, and Rip all come into play. Giving you, let's see, 3.2, 6.4, 9, almost 10% more damage on Ferocious Bite just for having those three bleeds up, on top of Soul of the Forest giving your finishers more, Blood Talons giving your finishers more, Sabertooth giving your finishers more. As you can see, there's just this real nice funneling of your damage into Ferocious Bite and or Rip. And so it allows you to just get maximum damage out of that. You can also run Sudden Ambush. So basically, finishing moves have a 4.8% chance per combo point to make your next Rake or Shred deal damage as if you were stealthed. So when they are in stealth, Shred basically deals 60% increased damage, double the chance to critically strike, and generates an additional combo point. So very good if you use it on that. If you need to apply Rake, though, it basically does 60% increased damage. That's the big one. It also stuns, but in PvE raid situations, that's not going to be the most useful thing. And then you want to use your Covenant Conduit, so Evolve Swarm. Kyrians, you don't use that one. For Kyrians, you would use something like Incessant Hunter would not be bad. Carnivorous Instinct wouldn't be bad. I'd use either one of these, or Adaptive Armor Fragment, giving you agility when you're healed inside the raid situation. This does not proc on your own regrowths, unfortunately, but you're going to get healed by healers in a raid. That's just what they do. So any of those three I think would be fine. I'd sim to see which one is going to work best. For Mythic Plus, Carnivorous Instinct is going to be very good with Predator, giving you more bonus damage on Tiger's Fury on top of the flat damage bonus of 15% it gives you. This is pushing it almost to 20 at 226 conduit level. That's not even pushing, obviously, high level conduits. So at 272, I think it's something like 6%. Not a bad number at all. Sudden Ambush is going to be, of course, the next one, because, of course, you get that... yeah, and then, of course, Covenant Choice as well. Again, except for Kyrian, where you'd want to use Taste for Blood. Just to give you some funnel on single target or boss fights. As far as your finesse conduits go, Druids actually have some really good ones. Tireless Pursuit I probably wouldn't use. It's more open world oriented, not so much Mythic Plus. It can be useful in a dungeon like DOS, but even then I wouldn't really use it that often. Front of the pack gives you MP, increased duration and radius on Stampeding Roar. Never a bad thing. Group utility. Born in the Wilds, this is probably going to be the most useful in raid situations because you get cooldown reduction on Heart of the Wild, which you can then use to empower your balance affinity spells. Born Anew can be useful, giving people movement speed as well as well fed, giving them a stat increase right off, so that way they're not missing the food buff. It's not as good as a feast, but it is nearly as good as a feast. Honestly, I'd pick any of these depending on what you want to try to focus on. If you're playing double finesse, I'd probably go front of the pack and Born Anew in Mythic Plus, or Born of the Wilds and front of the pack for raid situations. Born Anew is very niche. These two I think are a little bit more universally used. So it just kind of depends. If you're only one path like this tree is, then I'd use Born of the Pack for Mythic Plus and probably Born of the Wilds for raid. As far as endurance conduits go, Well-Honed Instincts, very good. When you fall below 40%, you get Frenzied Regeneration once basically starts at like 90 seconds and goes down from there. So good one to give you some self-sustain. Toughest Bark, giving you Bark Skin cooldown to allow you to use that defensive more often if you find that it's useful on a fight, because it makes the timing of Bark Skin better with scheduled damage events in a raid situation. You may want to use this over Well-Honed Instincts. Can also be used as your second endurance conduit behind Well-Honed Instincts. And Condensed Animosphere is also not bad at all when you take damage heal for 4.5% of your maximum health. This one, it's much better for Resto Druids than I think it is for Feral, because I think these two are just going to be better overall. You can also use this. Ursine Vigor is very niche if you need to bear form for any reason to do a damage event. In Mythic Plus, because that's what I know the best, the one that comes to mind is Grand Proctor Borrelia. With the orbs, you use the orbs and then shift into bear form right before it explodes, so you get extra health and armor just to help out your healer. Innate Resolve also can be useful, give you regrowth healing on yourself, so when you just pop regrowth on yourself, just use your Predatory Swiftness, then that healing is going to be increased. So again, all of these have niche uses. It's just a matter of which ones do you want to go for. I think Well-Honed Instincts and Toughest Bark are probably best generically, but the other three up top here all have niche uses. So let's talk the thing you're probably looking for, and that is Legendaries. So of course we have Unity, which means you're going to get, let's find it here. You're going to get, where is it at? Is it up here? There it is. Celestial Spirits. Basically gives you, instead of 16 seconds, it's only 12 seconds, but it's a 1 minute convoke. It's just really good. So Unity, definitely want to use that. Put it on the slot that you need it the most on. I'd recommend starting with Belt. That's where mine's at. Go from there. As far as raid situations, there's a couple of options that you might have here. Draught of Deep Focus, basically when you have Moonfire, Rake and Rip, Rejuve not so much, you don't care about that. You get 40% increased effects on that target. So this legendary is going to be best for fights that are pure single target. So think of fights at the end of the raid like Ragolon and the Jailer, no ads to deal with almost at all. You're going to be purely one target the entire time. So Draught of Deep Focus is going to be the best overall legendary for those fights. Frenzy Band you can use as kind of a generic one. You don't have to go into Castle Nathri to get it anymore. Rendell is in Haven. In Zareth Mortis, you can just buy it off of him for Ash, Flux, whatever you might have. And basically it gives you Berserk reduction, and then your combo point generating abilities also add an additional bleed to the target for another 8 seconds. So this one's just very good generically. It can be useful in all situations. If you're short on Ash, Flux, Cinders, whatever the case may be, Frenzy Band is going to be a good one that you can just start with and go from there. Alright, if you're looking for funnel damage, which is a very niche playstyle, think of Shard of Halkias for example, then Apex Predator's Craving is going to be your best option. So you want to apply Rip to as many targets as you can safely, and then you get basically a free Ferocious Bite that does maximum damage. It does proc the Soul of the Forest energy regen, so you can game it a little bit to where you dump your energy, use your free Ferocious Bite, get that energy back. Hopefully that gets you above 50 energy, and then use your actual Ferocious Bite to maximize the damage. So this gives good funnel into your target. And so this allows you to be able to kind of focus in on one target, similar to the Sub-Rogue playstyle, where they're really good on picking one target and just pumping all the damage into that. It's not going to help your overall damage, so in a dungeon, it's not going to be helpful for your overall look. You're probably going to be 3rd or 4th, depending on what tank you run with. But on priority targets, you're going to be doing quite a bit. Alright, so let's talk the Feral tier set. Have shoulders here. So I have the 2-piece. Basically each combo point spent reduces the cooldown of Berserk. Combined with Frenzy Band, you're getting basically 1 second cooldown reduction. Just allows you to have Berserk up much more often. And since Berserk is a 3-minute cooldown, this is going to get it down to roughly 2 minutes or so, maybe even less depending on Bloodlust timings and things of that nature. Pretty good set. The 4-piece, entering Berserk causes you to strike all nearby enemies, dealing damage, bleeding damage over 10 seconds, and then it deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. This was nerfed heavily right before the patch came out. It was like 700% damage, and now it's only something in the neighborhood of, I think, 300. Basically, the Feral tier set is not great. I'd still get it if you can. But the damage increase, I think most people are calculating it to only be around a 2 to 3% damage increase. Whereas for like Frosty K, theirs is something like a 10% damage increase. So Feral Druid set, unfortunately, is quite weak. But, you know, I would still go out of your way to try to get it if you can as fast as possible. Alright, let's talk about stats. So again, with all DPS specs, as usual, I'm always going to tell you to sim, because it's always going to give you the best option total. However, if you're looking for a generic guide, agility is always the best. So at a certain number of eye levels, you just take whatever piece you get. I think it's 15 is the number. Which, if the piece you're getting is more than 15 eye levels over what you have, it doesn't matter what the stats are, you're going to want to take it. It's going to be a DPS increase. After that, if you're kind of trying to pick out secondaries, you want crit as your primary one. This does a few things. Obviously, big ferocious bites. We like big numbers. But you also have a passive to where when your combo point generating abilities crit, they generate an additional combo point. So Shred gives 2, allows you to just build your combo points faster so that you can get into the real heart of your rotation, which is your finishers. After that, you want Mastery. Basically, this gives you all your bleeds and finishing moves extra damage. So again, you can see the synergies. They really want you to have bleeding targets that you hit big finishers on. And then Versatility and Haste are roughly equal. I'd say Verse is slightly better just because it's a flat damage increase. Haste is at the bottom. Does make your dots tick a little bit better and you get more energy regen, but I wouldn't prioritize Haste at all. I'd definitely be prioritizing Crit and Mastery. So for consumables, this means I've got these in a list over on my second screen, so apologies for looking that direction. Spectral Flask of Power is your flask of choice. Potion of Agility is your DPS potion, with Sharpening or Weight Stones as your weapon oil of choice. Heavy Desolate Armor Kit on your chest for survivability and stamina. For enchantments, any of the cloak enchants are good choices, whether it's speed, avoidance, leech, or just the flat stamina. Pick whichever one you want. I would probably do things like avoidance on Feral Druid just to kind of help you potentially avoid any AoE mechanics. But the differences are not that much in total. You want Eternal Stats on your chest. That's the 30 to all stats. plus 15 agility to your boots, and then you want crit and ring and gems as well. So crit, ring, and chance, and then gems also will be crit for the most part as well. Again, Simit, Mastery might be useful every now and then. For your weapons, Celestial Guidance is a good generic choice, giving you that extra agility. And then you can use Sinful Revelation or Lightless Force to more specialize your content. If you're doing only Mythic Plus, you might want to use Lightless Force. If you're only a Raider, Sinful Revelation is probably going to be your best bet overall. Or if you like to bounce between the two and you don't want to constantly switch your enchants, just slap a Celestial Guidance on there and you're going to be good to go. Gems, like I said, are the same as Ring and Chance. You want crit, with Mastery still being a possibility depending on your stat distribution. So again, Simit, go from there. Alright, let's talk rotation. So the Feral Druid rotation, people get it in their heads that Feral Druid rotation is complex. It's really not. So let's talk about single target to start. So we're going to work on this Competent Veteran. So you want to be in stealth to start almost every fight that you can. And what you want to do is you want to use Rake out of that. And then you want to use your combo point generator. So I use Thrash and that. And as you can see, we got one more combo point generator. We have a Blood Talons active. Then you want to do that. Pop your cooldowns. Again, you can see Rake is expiring, so we keep that going. And then you Ferocious Bite. Keep your combo points generating. Notice we don't have that, so you will overcap trying to maintain this. As you can see, I'm waiting for 50 energy to get the max damage possible. And then we're going to Rake to apply that, and since I'm running Predator, I have to reapply that there. So then again, we'll Thrash, bang, and go from there. That's basically all it is in single target. Keep your Blood Talons buff active, maintain your 2 bleeds, potentially the 3rd as well, and then use your cooldowns on cooldown, including Convoke the Spirits. For AoE situations, as soon as I find them here, where are... Okay, I don't think they have... Do they have the Swarm Bots here? Is this the only one that doesn't have Swarm Bots? Fuck it. Alright, we'll go back to the veterans. So for AoE situations, kind of the same thing. So you want to go back into stealth. Make sure you're starting fights from stealth. Rake, Thrash, swipe to 5 combo points, and then you Primal Wrath. And then you just repeat. You just swipe. Yeah, as you can see, we're getting there. And then Primal Wrath, Thrash, Rake. One more swipe to get that off, and then you Primal Wrath again. That's all you do. Obviously, if there's more than 2 targets, you maybe only want to apply a rip to 3, especially if you're using Apex Predator's Cravings. I wouldn't go more than 3 just to be safe. But beyond that, that's all there is to it. So maintain all your bleeds, make sure Rake is up or Rip is up, and if not, Ferocious Bite. And AoE, apply 2 to 3 rips just to get your, especially if you're using Apex Predators, just to give your dots rolling. And then you keep your Blood Talons up as much as possible, and then Primal Wrath. That's all it is. So the rotation is actually much, much more simple than people give it credit for. People think that it's kind of wild and wacky. You hear something about snapshotting. Let's talk about that real quick. So Feral Druid is the only spec in the game that still has an old snapshotting mechanic. Basically, what snapshotting used to be is that whatever damage amps you had at the time that you hit an ability, it would basically apply all those damage amps to that ability and then maintain it no matter what happens. So, quick example, if you have Tiger's Fury rolling and you apply a Rake, it's going to have that entire Rake have that Tiger's Fury damage buff, even if you get the Rake off in the last second of Tiger's Fury. So there is some min-maxing that you can do where you try to make sure that your Rake and your Rip in particular always are under the effects of Blood Talons and Tiger's Fury and Berserk if you can. It's not always going to be possible, but when you have those 3 going, I would definitely try to make sure that you're getting those up online just so that you maximize the damage output. Again, it's a min-max strategy. If you're just trying to get into Feral Druid, I wouldn't focus too hard on it until you get really comfortable with the spec and everything you can do with it. But once you get really comfortable with the spec, I would definitely try to focus on trying to min-max your snapshotting in the Feral Druid setup. It's not something that's in any spellbook. It's just something that's completely under the hood that the theory crafters have found out on over time. So overall, Feral Druid in 9.2 is in a weird place. I think it's a really good single target spec. Its AoE is serviceable, but if you have your choice of taking like Survival Hunter or Feral Druid, the choice is pretty obvious. There's not many specs that I would maybe take Feral Druid over, maybe like Assassination Rogue, and that's about it. But overall, Feral Druid, despite the fact that it gets memed on, it is loved by the most ardent of its fans. They are very loud and very proud of being Feral Druids. Do not disrespect them for loving this spec. I consider myself someone that is always interested in Feral. Love what the spec is, try to watch what the spec is up to. Pray that one day it might be meta. And always try to give it a shot when I can. When I'm out world questing or when I'm out leveling, Feral is always the spec that I prefer, even though right now I am playing Resto Druid as main for Mythic Plus keys, because I just wanted to try something different in healing other than Mistweaver Monk, which I've been basically only healing on for quite a long time. Alright, that said, the spec isn't in the best position if you're looking to push the highest of PvE content. So if you're trying to get, top 15 world rating, or if you're trying to push the absolute highest of keys, you're probably not going to be playing Feral all that much. However, if you're just like a cutting edge guild or a late Hall of Fame guild, and you just maybe want to get like your 3000 rating for the Conduits and the, just to say you got to 3000 rating, Feral Druid is going to be 100% able and capable of hitting those goals. That said, if you want to get into those highest echelons, what you're going to have to do is put in a ton of work. You're going to have to make a good name for yourself, both in Raid and Mythic Plus scenarios. You're going to have to network to get people that are going to be willing to take you on and say, okay, let's figure out how we can work around a Feral Druid in the guild. But until then, those of you that want to do it, work hard. And for the rest of us that just enjoy watching the spec or always are interested in what's going on with it, maybe one day Feral will be the meta spec of choice. Anyways, everyone, thanks for sticking around. This is a long video. I'm up to like 32 minutes right now, so I appreciate you very much for sticking around to the end if you have. DK guides are going to be coming next. I've got Blood and Frost that I'm almost finished writing now. Unholy I'm going to take a little bit more time with because I haven't played a lot of Unholy, so I want to mess around with it a little bit, even on just a target dummy, to kind of get a feel for what it wants to do. So until the next video, I hope you're all staying safe, and I will see you all in the next video.